fearful look as voices rose in the adjacent hall. "They've arrived. You'll be keeping your thoughts to yourself, lad." "Prince Charles Edward Stuart, my laird," Lovate's steward announced from the door. "Your Highness, welcome." Lovate pushed away from the table and stood with a subtle flick of his hand that compelled Coll to do the same. Torn between disenchantment and loyalty, he complied with a bow for his aspirant sovereign. That morning the prince had been prettily turned out, a kilt and coat in the bright red Stuart tartan, his cuffs and collar of purple velvet with gold braid. He'd worn a blue silk sash across his chest and matching bonnet upon his bewigged head. Now his short blonde hair was uncovered, his linen skewed and stained by sweat and dirt, his pale cheeks ruddy. Without his fripperies, he appeared more a lad still wet behind the years than royalty, every bit the pretender the royalists christened him. Charles Edward circled the table to take Lovate's place at the head. His Irish bootlicker quartermaster, John O'Sullivan, who served as a colonel in France, headed to the opposite end with 4 other Irishmen, Robert O'Shea, Sir Thomas Sheridan, Sir John Macdonald, and the Reverend George Kelly close behind. Coll recognized William Murray, Marquis of Tilbarden, and an Englishman, Francis Strickland, among the others, along with Coll's cousin Alexander MacLeod's man, Edmund Burke, and Aeneas MacDonald, a younger brother of the Laird of Kinlochmoidart and a Paris banker who'd played a prominent role in securing the financing necessary for Charles Edward to launch this catastrophe. "Lord Lovate, many thanks for your hospitality. We are grateful." The prince's tone carried a pretentious lisp. He immediately contradicted his words by rejecting the whiskey offered him and demanding brandy instead. "It is my deepest regret we haven't had a chance to meet before under more fortuitous circumstances." Lovate grudgingly took a chair next to Coll at the prince's right hand. "Aye, my health has kept me from joining your progress, I'm saddened to say." Coll rolled his eyes at that. Ill health had nothing to do with it. Joining the prince simply wouldn't have offered his uncle any benefit. Reason enough for Lovate to remain within Gortlick's 4 walls. When his drink was delivered, the prince held his goblet aloft to toast his host. "Drink well, my friends. It has been a long day for us indeed." Shorter for some. Lovate's glower stilled Coll's tongue. Charles Edward nodded solemnly and lifted his drink again. "To those valiant men whose lives were cut short this day." That wasn't to whom Coll had been referring. The prince may not have recognized the slight, but from the way O'Sullivan's eyes narrowed, his quartermaster did. "Your Highness, we should discuss our next course of action." "Surely the prince will journey to Ruthven, where his men await him," Coll said, earning a jab in the ribs from his uncle and a low hiss of warning. O'Sullivan shook his head. "Nay, his safety is paramount. Best he return to France in all haste." "Nay," Aeneas MacDonald spoke. "We should retreat to the mountains, pick off the Sassenachs one by one on our own terms." Coll didn't know MacDonald well, but he liked his thinking. Even while he'd helped drill the Jacobites in the military methods of the English and French, Coll had argued for the same. Use the Highlanders' natural skills and familiarity with the terrain to their advantage to defeat their enemy. "I agree with O'Sullivan." Of course Lovate would agree with the Irishman. On the one hand, a staunch Catholic desirous of ousting the Protestant king from the throne. On the other, he'd been granted contracts to supply said crown with mutton and wool. Until he could guarantee his future fortunes, it suited his uncle's private interests to bundle the prince back to France. "An insurgent campaign cannot be sustained without money and ready supplies. Lord Murray suggested stockpiling provisions for such a purpose months ago." Again, a rational point from MacDonald. "Such defeatism is for the weak-hearted." Charles Edward clucked his tongue to dismiss the idea. "We are the righteous hand of God, are we not? He demands we defeat..."